Ding dong, the Rothman's gone. At least as far as Fox's X-Men movies go. Well, Fox's movies in general. And a better thing could not have happened to the X-Men franchise. Tom Rothman's micromanagement bullshit almost completely tanked the franchise with the just dismal reception that X3 and X-Men Origins Wolverine had received. But then he left. He went away. He was gone. And we got this. X-Men First Class. The beginning of a trilogy that seeks to set right what went horribly wrong. Yeah, so with the whole X-Men Origins thing, originally, the original announcement of it was that there would be 2 Origins movies. That we would get the Wolverine one, which of course we got, and then there would be a Magneto one. Well, the Magneto one eventually evolved into this, which is not just the origins of Magneto, but also the origins of Charles Xavier and their relationship and how everything that we know from the first movie onward began. So how is it as a movie? How does it compare to the comics? What did people like about it and not like about it? Well, let's talk about it. X-Men First Class, as X-Fest continues today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. So, the only real criticism I heard about First Class that sort of springs to mind off the top of my head was that it's not the same as the actual First Class from the comics. The First Class in the comics was Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, and Iceman. Well, that's not the same as what's in this movie, therefore it sucks. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. That's stupid. Adaptation. I know it's a lot of syllables for that word, but that's a word you need to learn and understand the meaning of. Okay, what happened in the 50 years of comics is not going to be mirrored exactly verbatim on the motion picture screen. It's just not going to happen. It doesn't work like that. Okay. Besides, as far as the movie continuity goes, we already have Cyclops and Iceman in the other movies. And actually, in X-Men Origins, we did have Cyclops in that. That's where, they leached his power for Deadpool. Because, we all know about Deadpool's laser eyes, right? Yeah!
I'm a fire in my laser!
No, let's just stop talking about that forever. So no Cyclops and no X-Men in X-Men First Class, no Iceman, but we do have Beast. We don't have Jean Grey. We do have Mystique. We do have a character named Angel. Sorry, Angel. Angel was in it as well, the original First Class. But it's not the Angel we know. This is some other Angel. It's like a girl with dragonfly wings that can spit venom. Why didn't you call her Dragonfly? I don't know. It just seemed very odd to me to call her Angel when 2 movies prior we had Angel. I don't get it. But we got Havoc. We got Banshee. We got Azazel. And we had Kevin Bacon. We had Emma Frost, which, by the way, we were introduced to very, very, very briefly in Wolverine Origins. And some other random mutants that were killed very quickly. Well, I guess Riptide wasn't killed very quickly, but Darwin was. Oh, alas, poor Darwin. I really liked Darwin. I wanted to see more of him doing stuff. You know who he reminded me of was Shane Gooseman from Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers. Shane Gooseman, or the Goose, as they call him, basically the Clint Eastwood in space character, had a built-in sort of bionic ability where he could evolve to counteract any kind of threat. So, like, for example, if a laser gun shot at him, he would crystallize his skin over where the shot impacts, so he wouldn't be injured by it. If he jumps into the water, he would get gills and webbed hands and feet so he could swim better and breathe underwater. Stuff like that. So Darwin's powers were pretty much exactly that, which I thought was kind of cool. And I wanted to see him use them more. I thought it was a really cool ability, and it was neat to see. But alas, he gets killed in like the first skirmish with Shaw. Oh well, what can you do? So one of the opening scenes, of course, takes place in Poland in the 40s again. We see, once again, Magneto's parents being torn away from him. However, this time, we actually see what happened next. Yes. So after he used his magnetic powers manifested and he ripped apart the fence, he was spirited away by a Nazi scientist, played by Kevin Bacon, who wanted to explore this power and figure out how to harness it, how to use it, and even used his own mother as an impetus and says, either move this coin on my table, show me you can do this, or I'll kill your mother at the count of 3. And he tries and tries and tries. He can't move it, so he shoots his mother. It's pretty brutal. It's nasty. Magneto had a shitty childhood, man. And then he just goes nuts. Like, he's so enraged by it, and then his power manifests again, and he's like, ah! So anger is the trick. Excellent. And it's wonderful because that sets things up perfectly for Magneto's story arc throughout the movie. Part of it is that he thinks that he is fueled by anger, that he needs to keep his anger in mind at all times, his anger of the injustice that has been done to him throughout his life, to use his power. And it isn't until he meets Charles Xavier that he realizes he's been wrong all this time. And it's not about anger, it's about the balance between anger and serenity. And Charles helps him find that balance. And there's some wonderful scenes between Charles and Eric where it really shows their friendship, which they've hinted at in the previous movies. But here we finally get to see not only how they first met, but how they eventually had a falling out. And, they had similar ideas, but different ways of wanting to approach them. Charles wanted to cooperate. Eric wanted to conquer. Essentially saying, we're the superior ones, why should we even waste our time with humans? And then Charles is like, because humans are worth it. We should learn to live together. I mean, they're not going away. Yes, we are superior to them in terms of our abilities and such, but we have to share this planet. So Eric never learned to share. And that's the moral of the story, kids. Sharing is caring. Anyway, I really like how that whole relationship developed. And holy crap, what two amazing actors as those characters. James McAvoy, who was one of the finest young actors working today, and Michael Fassbender, one of the other finest actors working today. Just fantastic. Much like how with the original X-Men we had Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, two of the finest actors working today. Just amazing, amazing stuff. So they really did an outstanding job on the casting there. But I really loved how we get to see that Charles wasn't always the sort of, kind, caring, generous mentor that we've always known him as. No, he was a bit of a womanizer and a boozer, and used his abilities to get women in his college days. And I thought that was pretty hilarious. Speaking of pretty hilarious, when they're going around looking for mutants to recruit and to help and such, that wonderful Wolverine cameo, and I just love how they approach him. I mean, the way they approach him, like, how would he have any idea what they're there for? I mean, they really misrepresented themselves there, where Charles comes in on one side and says, "Hi, I'm Charles Xavier," and then Eric comes in and says, "Hi, I'm Eric Lencher." And Wolverine's just like, go fuck yourself. And speaking from a directorial standpoint, I love how that scene played out. How it just had them come in, slide. I mean, it seemed like they were... I mean, it could easily have been misinterpreted by Logan that they were hitting on him. Hence, go fuck yourself. I don't bend that way, pal. But I love the fact that after that moment, they slink away, and we get a moment of Wolverine just having a cigar and having a shot and just kind of looking like, who the fuck were those guys? When it's unnecessary in that the joke has happened, but I totally understand why they had that. Was just to not just to give a little bit more screen time for Wolverine, but to give the audience time to laugh, because that was freaking hilarious. Just a little throwaway joke, just a throwaway cameo, but so memorable and so hilarious that I love that the director, Matthew Vaughn, gave time for the audience to really enjoy that little gag and laugh before they went on to the next thing. Because if it had been Brett Ratner, he would have just had the joke and cut straight to the next scene, and people would have been laughing over the next part and missed whatever was going on. So Matthew Vaughn, vastly superior director. Yeah. I gotta say, just generally, a really wonderful, likable cast in this. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I love Jennifer Lawrence. I think she's beautiful and talented and just wonderful. Loved her as the young Mystique. I think she did a great job. And I love the fact that, when Eric is talking to her, for example, and she's been in her just, drop-dead gorgeous blonde guise for so long, and he comes in and he says, if you're using half of your ability just to try to look normal, how are you going to protect yourself, and it's great. And he talks about how, he thinks she's beautiful as she is. As do I. I think Blue is beautiful, and both her and Rebecca Romijn Stamos really pulled it off, man. They pull off the Blue look quite well. But yeah, I love that, again, much like I've talked about in previous X-Men movies, that this is one that really gives those character moments a chance to breathe. And we haven't seen that kind of care taken with the characters and their, emotional issues since the first two movies. X3 completely blew that to pieces. There was no emotional weight to any of the intended to be emotional scenes in that. Wolverine Origins had a little bit, definitely better, but there's other problems, which we talked about last time. But this one really gets it back on track. And I just don't see how anybody could not love this movie. Complaining about the fact that it's not the real First Class from the comics, that is the most weak criticism possible, that you're cheating yourself out of a truly superb film. There is just so much good about this movie. I have to say, I really underappreciated it the first time I watched it, because I don't even know what it was about it. There were certain aspects of it that just were kind of rubbing me the wrong way at the time. I don't know if I just wasn't in the right mindset to be watching it at the time. I have no idea. I don't even know. But like Michael Fassbender's interpretation of Magneto, for example, is he has several different accents. And he talked about the fact that was very intentional. It wasn't that he was slipping as an actor. No, that was very intentional. Like, occasionally he has a bit of an Irish accent. Occasionally he's more British. Occasionally he's even a little more German. And he said the reason he chose to do that with the character is it's very intentional, is because this is a character that has been around the world and been a part of many different cultures over his life. So he's just kind of picked up. It was meant to convey the international nature of the character, and that he's been all over the world in his travels to track down the men responsible for wronging him. In watching it again now, I got that. I was like, okay, I get what he's doing now, and that's fine. That no longer bothers me. I understand. And just generally, I don't know what it was about it the first time I watched it, but I liked it. I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was amazing. But then in watching it again now, I really just found a whole new appreciation for it as a whole. I mean, I think it really is one of the best X-Men movies by far. I mean, it's just so damn good. I really like the characters. Really like the the story of Beast. How he's just this brilliant young scientist, and how they Charles helps to encourage him to just be comfortable with his mutant abilities. In this case, he hasn't transformed into the blue furry beast that we know. He's still in his human form, but he has feet that are like hands, like they can grip like crazy. And he shows them, and does some acrobatics in the lab and such, and everybody's really impressed. And it's the first time he's ever felt comfortable with that. And that's a wonderful moment, because it shows a perfect example of the path that Charles takes later, where he becomes the mentor, helping mutants just by the dozens to feel comfortable with who they are and what they can do, and to control it, and not to fear themselves, not to be ashamed of themselves, but to embrace who they are. And I think that's just a wonderful message generally to be sending to young viewers watching these movies, is don't be ashamed of yourself, just be yourself. Simple message that a lot of people really struggle with incorporating into their daily lives. And there's so much self-consciousness nowadays, and I think this is a wonderful way to encourage people not to be bogged down by that in their day-to-day lives, but again in a fantastical setting. Just like, and that's the thing that I just love about X-Men in general, is it's always dealt with these sort of social commentary kind of issues, but in a way that's fun and entertaining, and it's almost like you're being given a perspective on these things without even realizing it. And I hope that the comics and the movies and the animated shows have helped kids out there to, not be afraid of being themselves, and to not be ashamed of who they are. Because I think that's a wonderful, positive message. And also not to hate people for being different, which is another wonderful, positive message. And, I'm glad to see that a series of movies that encourages those messages so strongly is so well liked and so successful. But getting back to the movie, I got a little sidetracked there. So that scene really sets up Beast's story arc quite nicely, because it starts off where he's ashamed of who he is. He has this little moment where he shows what he can do, and everybody's really impressed and everything. But then still, despite that, and having that wonderful moment, he's still ashamed of who he is. He still wants to be normal. So he develops the serum, offers it to Mystique so she can be normal as well. And she refuses it, because she's been talking to Eric by that point, and realizes that, no, this is who I am. I just, I have to accept it. This is something I just got to deal with on my own. Hank, however, decides he's going to take the serum. So he does. It works for a few seconds, and he sees his feet become normal, and he's like, oh, wow, it's really working. But then it all goes horribly wrong, and he becomes the blue furry beast that we know from the comics. And, in the original comics, he wasn't in his blue furry form. It wasn't until later. Honestly, I don't actually know what the origin is in the comics. I don't think I've ever actually read that story that explains where he got his blue furriness from. But anyway, in the movie, it was an extract partly from Mystique, which is presumably where he got the blue color from, part of her contribution to the serum. And her transformation abilities were also part of the serum as well. They kind of gave him the key to unlock it, but it all goes horribly wrong, and he ends up becoming the blue furry beast that we know. And it's funny because he's again now even more ashamed of who he is and what he looks like. Yet everybody else is like, "Wow, you look awesome." It's like, yeah, dude, you look pretty badass. Let's think about some of the other characters. Havoc, Alex Summers, who is Scott Summers' brother, I don't know that they really talk about that relation in the movie that much, if at all, but we know as comic fans. So Scott Summers, for whatever reason, is not there at this point in time. I don't know why, but I guess they just decided, well, we've already done a bunch of stuff with Cyclops, we'll just leave him out of this one and focus on other characters. Fair enough, whatever. To be fair, I mean, it was a pretty big ensemble cast to begin with, so I mean, you only have so much screen time for everybody. But I really enjoyed the character of Havoc. He was a lot of fun, and just how he was trying to control his powers, and then how Hank developed the chest thing for him to focus his power more like what we know from the comics, where he just sends out these rings of energy force, and prior to that he would do them kind of as a hula hoop thing and just kind of hip thrust to get them to dislodge them and send them catapulting away. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. Again, I'm not overly familiar with the Havoc character. I don't recall reading a ton of comics that featured that character. I don't think I even knew that he was Scott Summers' brother until like way later. But there's one I've always been meaning to read, actually, is one where Havoc and Wolverine teamed up. It was called Meltdown, which had this beautiful painted artwork throughout. It's like a mini-series that was done. And I've been meaning to check that one out for ages. I really got to do that one of these days. But yeah, I mean, Havoc was okay. Now they do get uniforms by the end of it. You know, the obligatory X-Men uniforms. But none of them even look remotely like what we've seen in the comics. They do actually bear a bit of a resemblance to the original uniforms that the original team wore back at the beginning of the comics. So I think that's more the kind of look they were going for, which makes sense because this is supposed to be the beginning. They all had similar costumes, so maybe later they'll branch out more. Then we have the character of Banshee. Banshee's kind of fun. I found the casting very odd for Banshee because in the original comics he's Irish, like very Irish. He's redhead, speaks with an Irish accent. And that's well, I mean, the young kid they got to play Banshee is a redhead, but there's no accent. He actually speaks almost more like a surfer dude. And honestly, I don't know what it was about that particular actor, but he seemed like he was trying desperately to stay awake half the time. He was like either half asleep or half stoned. I don't know. It just seemed like a really strange characterization of Banshee to me. The on-screen version of Banshee that I remember most was the TV movie Generation X from back in 1996. That was the first time we ever got any kind of live-action X-Men on screen. And I really enjoyed it a lot, actually. I really liked that movie a lot. I wish it would get some kind of proper DVD or Blu-ray release. It would be really nice. But anyway, in that case, it was actually Emma Frost and Banshee were the teachers at Charles Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. So the X-Men and Xavier were God knows where. So they were left in charge of the school to teach the kids and recruit new mutants and stuff like that. So it was a fun movie. You had Matt Frewer as the bad guy, and you had Jubilee. Jubilee in her most significant on-screen appearance ever. She was like one of the main characters in it, and it just seems like she keeps getting put on the cutting room floor in the current X-Men movies. Almost every X-Men movie since X2, I think, like X-Men 1. You go and look at the deleted scenes, Jubilee's there. She has lines. She's played by a different actress in every movie, but you never see her in the movies. I think she's in Apocalypse. I haven't seen Apocalypse yet, but I think she has a little bit more to do in that. At the very least, she was in that trailer that was kind of like a recruitment film for the school. And then, of course, we have the wonderful Kevin Bacon as Sebastian Shaw, who is just a force to be reckoned with. I mean, the Baconator, come on. And he's great. He's obviously having a blast playing the bad guy. You don't get to see Kevin Bacon as the baddie very often, so it was pretty nice to see him, branching out a little bit there. Maybe slumming it a little bit, but yeah, it seemed pretty clear to me he was having a lot of fun with that character. He was just so evil, I mean, he was really out for himself, and his ability to just absorb any form of energy and then redirect it was pretty formidable. And I thought, in this case, I talk about action movies having third acts that kind of fall apart. I thought in this case the third act was actually pretty solid. How he was looking, the whole big plan with Shaw was to trigger World War III, basically, to get the Americans and Russians to start shooting nukes at each other, that he was orchestrating the Cuban Missile Crisis and everything. And then his ultimate plan, like, well, okay, that plan's not quite working, so I'll turn myself into a nuclear bomb, absorb all the energy from this nuclear sub, and unleash it on the Russian and U.S. Ships to trigger the war. And yeah, I mean that was actually a pretty good plan. That's he kept his eye on the prize, and it all went through very nicely. And I actually really liked how the resolution to that, when Magneto confronts him and kills him, was not a big over-the-top action sequence. It was actually very low-key, just where he has the coin, and Shaw is frozen. And also interesting, it puts Charles Xavier in an interesting moral position, because Xavier would not kill someone, but we have the juxtaposition between him speaking through Shaw and observing Magneto through Shaw, and essentially feeling Shaw's pain and such as Magneto is tormenting him, but keeping him frozen at the same time so that he can't unleash his nuclear power that he's been absorbing. And he has to keep him frozen. Like, there's no choice. He has to keep him frozen. All he can do is beg Eric not to kill him, but he really has no power in that situation. All he can do is keep Shaw frozen so he won't unleash the nuclear power. And honestly, I mean, Charles doesn't know what the fuck to do. All he can do is keep him frozen, so keep him locked, but he can't keep him like that forever. Eric takes the initiative, takes the coin, and moves it like he always wanted, and pushes it slowly through his head. And I just love that their gaze is locked. Like, Shaw is looking straight at him, and he's looking straight at him, and he just moves the coin right through his head. I mean, it's very subtle, yet very emotionally powerful. I mean, there's so much going on in that scene, but the scale of it is very small. It's three characters locked in this situation, and there really logically only being one solution. I mean, really, the only solution was to kill Shaw. There was no other way out of that situation. They had to kill him so he would not unleash that power and devastate everything, and possibly even trigger a war. Now, we do get our spectacle moment, of course, with the with the U.S. and Russian ships launching their missiles at the island, and then Magneto doing his thing, or he's redirecting them. He's trying to redirect them and destroy the ship. So then Charles keeps, taking control of him, and then they keep attacking him, and it's just, and so you see some will fall into the ocean, some come back up and start firing off again. It's very tense and very exciting. But again, not so over the top that you feel overwhelmed by spectacle, which a lot of action movies fall into the trap of doing. And then I get tears in my eyes every time. I mean, something's going to happen at some point that's going to make this happen. But when Moira McTaggart is firing her gun at Magneto and he's deflecting the bullets away, just kind of haphazardly, and one of them hits Charles in the spine, knocks him off his feet, and then it's like, holy shit, that's the moment, that's what happened, that's why he can't walk. And then where it just slowly pulls back, and he's like, I can't feel my legs, and it just slowly pulls back and dissolves to the next scene. Beautiful, just that is allowed to breathe properly, and you get the right amount of emotional impact from that. Just beautifully done. A little side note, speaking of Moira, I almost forgot to mention, very charming actress playing her. The only issue again with accents Moira McTaggart is as Scottish as they come, yet no Scottish accent. I don't know. There is one scene I really liked, is where they're walking. He's walking and talking to Eric, and at the same time, he's having a telepathic conversation with Moira, he's not talking to Eric. I think it's to the other guy, the one played by what's his face, the guy from Three Musketeers, Oliver Platt. Yeah, he's talking to him and saying, "Oh yeah, no, I'm a very, very powerful telepath. In fact, while we've been walking and talking, I just had a pleasant conversation with Moira." And Moira just pulls up in the car and says, "Yes, it was lovely." So, I just love all the little things where Charles is demonstrating his ability, and how already by this point he's really refined his telepathic abilities and such. But yeah, wow. I definitely horribly underappreciated this film the first time I saw it, and now, yeah, I gotta say, it just blew me away watching it again, as you can probably tell. Really, really enjoyed it a lot. Just very minor complaints about it. Just not even complaints, really. Just kind of like, well, that was kind of odd. The what's the lack of love for Ireland and Scotland here? Like, come on. I don't get it. I love both of those accents. I think they're very, very wonderful accents. But I don't know. Anyway, whatever. Minor niggles, really. I mean, an otherwise absolutely superb film, and I don't know how anybody can hate it. Really, I mean, it really hits all the beats right, as far as I'm concerned, and really feels like an X-Men story. You got some wonderful character moments. You got a great assortment of characters, some of which we've seen before in their later years. Others that are new, and just wonderful. And I love how we got the sources for so many things, like the sources of Charles and Eric's friendship, the source of Magneto's helmet. How like this is the first time we find out that Charles and Mystique knew each other, or Raven, and that they have a back history as well. So it's interesting. Now, this is definitely a case of rewriting history to some extent, because much like Wolverine Origins, certain things don't quite line up perfectly with the previous movies, but that's understandable. I mean, I think in some cases the previous movies kind of had some throwaway stuff, not realizing how long the franchise would actually be going. So now they're wanting to do more with these characters, so they kind of got to rewrite history a little bit in order to make these things fit. So, I don't know. Interesting to see where it's going to go from here. I mean, they're talking about doing a full-blown X-Men cinematic universe now. So what that says to me is we can expect more X-Men related movies to come out. I mentioned last time there's apparently a Gambit movie in the works. There's a hint in X-Men Apocalypse that the next one will be to do with Mr. Sinister, which is the next logical step. See, now they're going in the next logical direction. Like, remember way back when I did my original rant about X3, I said the third movie should have been the Phoenix Saga. The fourth movie should have been Days of Future Past. It's like, it's like pick your story arc and do that. And now, that's exactly what they're doing. It took them 16 years to get there, but but they're finally doing that. And by God, they're doing it well. Yeah. So next time we'll be talking about The Wolverine. I'll be watching the uncut, unrated version, and checking that out. I've only actually seen it once, and that was shortly after I'd originally bought it. So, yeah, I honestly don't remember much about it. I remember it being pretty good. We'll see if I still think that next time. Until then, quick thank you to my Patreon sponsors, especially Get Your Gorgeous On and Kyle Pellegrini, my two highest level sponsors. Thank you very much. And for everyone else, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Until then, sayonara.